I am starting our recording. It says screen capture in progress, so hopefully that works today. You may have seen that I accidentally only got the audio from Wednesday, but hopefully today we'll have the screen as well. Thanks to almost everyone for getting Lab 0 in. I was actually really impressed by how many people got to that, even though it's the first week. Come talk to me if you didn't complete that because you were not aware of the assignment, and we can likely work something out. So today, let me zoom in a little bit. We are on to our second day of class, and so usually how this is going to go is I will open up our lecture topic for the day, and we will go through the topics in here. And today we'll actually have some of our first in-class programming, so you can look forward to that as we go along. So today we are going to practice some Java basics and start to compare Java to Python. So most of you do know Python, and so that can be a good starting place for us. So I really just want to actually jump right into a Java program. So I'm going to open up, actually, before I get there, I saw this, it looked like from the Discord messages, most people actually have been able to run a Java program in their IDE of choice. Can everyone, if you have been able to run a Java program, raise your hand? And yeah, that's awesome, looking really good. So you are welcome to follow along in class if that is helpful for you, or you can just, watch me and if that's better, and take notes, or whatever works best for you. So jumping into some Java basics. So I'm going to open up Eclipse since that's what I'm going to be using in class here. Unfortunately, these are all pretty small, but just as a reminder, I guess, does anybody remember, or if you're familiar with Eclipse, suppose this is your first time opening Eclipse. Anybody remember the first thing that we would need to do? Suppose we didn't have, it's possible that you see a welcome screen. You can just X out of that. Suppose I didn't have any projects set up. What would be my first step? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I would first need to make a new Java project. I can get that through the file new. I can also get there, at least on the Mac, by right-clicking in my package explorer on the left. But I would create a Java project, and you can uncheck this module info thing here, and I might call it, because I'm just going to use one project for this whole class, so I might call it CSCI 132, but I've done a couple of these already, so I'm going to call it CSCI 132.3, which might be small for you. But I now create a Java project. Anybody remember what I would next want to do if I want to be able to write some Java code? Yeah.
Create a package.
Yeah, create a package. And for us, we can think of these packages as just organizing our code. I might make a package for each lab and each project, and also I'll make a package for each lecture day. So I'm going to make a package, and I'm going to call this day 2, since it's the second day of lecture. And then finally, if I want to write some Java code that I can run, what's the last thing that I should do? Yeah.
Create a class.
I create a class. Perfect. Thank you. Now I know that I can forget everything, and you all will help me out, so thanks for that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just go over some data types in Java. So I'm going to make this class called data types. And you might also notice that I checked this public static void main. I checked the box that will let Eclipse make this for me. So that when this file is generated, we have some things are created for us by Eclipse. You can see at the top here, we are using this package, or inside this package. Everything in Java is going to be inside a class, and our class is always going to have the same name as our file. And then our main function, which we always have to have, will always look like this. And if I check that box, then Eclipse makes it for me. Okay, so thinking back to other programming languages or other programming experience you might have had, one really useful thing to do is to be able to write comments. And we actually already have a comment here. I'll just delete it. But if I want to write an inline comment in Java, it just looks like this. Also, how's this size looking up there for everybody? Cool. I'm seeing some thumbs up. So that's just one comment. You know, I can put it at the end, or a comment for a single line. I can put it at the end of the line. We'll see that later as well. If I have a multi-line comment that I'd like to put in, I think that can sometimes be a nice way to explain what your program is going to do. I can do that like this. This is a multi-line comment. I can make a nice comment over multiple lines. So that's how we can write a multi-line comment. I believe that these stars in the middle are not actually necessary, but we can test that later. Okay, so maybe the most fundamental thing when we're programming is being able to save data as variables. So does anybody remember from other programming languages types of data that we can have? Just anything, yeah. Sure, that is a more advanced data type that we will get to later. But yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Booleans.
Boolean is a great one. Super basic. And so yeah, what's a Boolean?
True, false.
Yeah, a Boolean just holds a true or a false. And so in Java, this is different from Python. When we use variables, in order to create them, we have to declare what type they are. And so this can, if you're coming from Python, this can trip you up. So if I want to make a Boolean, say I want to make a Boolean that says, you know, whether you've taken CSCI 132. I'll call it taken 132. So in Python, I could just assign this variable the value true or false. But in Java, I have to specify that this is a Boolean. And if it helps you remember this, the reason is that this is going to tell the computer to reserve the right amount of memory and for a Boolean. But as long as you remember that, for the purpose that you do need to declare these data types, you'll be fine for the purpose of this class. You'll also notice that at the end of every statement in Java, I need a semicolon. And so let's just compile and run this by pressing the green button. Should have asked you to, oh, well, of course nothing's happening because I haven't printed anything. just for anybody remember how we print things or already know how we print? Yeah, someone.
System.out.println.
Yeah, system.out.println. And I'm going to print out the value of this Boolean here. And that way we just have a nice little test. Yeah. Another thing, so another sort of thing that was hidden under the hood in Python that we can work with in Java is the idea of declaring variables versus initializing them. So here I have both declare, and initialized. Oops. In one line. And that's kind of what we did in Python. We both declare and we initialize the variable in one line. But in Java, we can also just declare a variable. And personally, I think of this maybe as a useful way of organizing my program. Maybe I declare my variables beforehand. But just so that you're not confused, I can do something like, let's make another, I guess the examples I have in my notes are verbose and debug. And here I have declared these variables, but not initialized them. And so when you see a line like that, that's what it's done. And then I can, on a separate line, maybe later in my program, I can actually initialize those, give them data. So for example, maybe I'm going to say verbose is false. And maybe that means, yeah.
What's that little notification next to the line number? I'm getting that too, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is Eclipse or whatever. It's probably true that whatever, any IDE that you're using is going to try to help you out. And sometimes it helps you out by actually finding like errors that aren't going to run. In this case, it's finding more of a sort of style error, which is that we have declared, at this point, I think, yeah. We have declared these variables, verbose and debug, but we haven't used them anywhere. And so the IDE is saying, why have you even made these? Couldn't you just delete those? And great point, Eclipse. We could. But if we do something like print it out, let's do, and then I guess maybe I'll say debug is also false so that I have something to print. Print line debug. So my guess is that after we've done this, I would think, oh, we still gotta, maybe I need to save it by, yeah. So for me, now that I've actually used those variables later in my program, I no longer have that warning. But you will definitely see those a lot, especially as you're developing your program. Of course, there's going to be a point where you have declared or even set the value of a variable, but you haven't used it later in the program yet. Okay, so great, we got Booleans. Probably can't do too much with just Booleans. Yeah, you have a question.
What exactly is the benefit of initializing a variable?
Of declaring it?
Or yeah, sorry,
So,
declaring.
that's a good question. So it does reserve the space in memory. So this would be, my guess is maybe there's some speed up by having things that you're going to use together, close together in memory maybe, but also it could be, I'm not positive about this, but it also can just help organize your program. So later we will write a program that converts temperature in Fahrenheit to a temperature in Celsius. And if at the beginning of my program I know that I'm going to need a variable to hold my temperature I'm going to get my temperature from a user, and I can declare a variable to hold that because I'm going to need one. And then I'm going to need a resulting temperature, and I can declare that at the beginning. And that can be a nice way to organize your program. But I could also, I'm really not actually sure, so I could get back to you on that one. Yeah. Yeah, good question. Okay, yeah, so we got did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, so since we can declare two variables on the same line, does that also mean we can initialize variables?
Yeah, we definitely can. So I will provide us our next data type of a nice one that we'll use a lot is an int. And yeah, we can declare two ints on the same line if we want. Maybe let's declare an int I to be 85 and another int j to be 33. Oops. And yeah, we can see that I'm not using these, but I can check, does this still run? Yep, I haven't done anything. At least my program still runs. And I could also print these. And we can probably see that they are, oh. Uh-oh. Aha, yes. Okay, let's see if this gets us better. Yeah, so yeah, great question. And we can actually even mix those. We can declare one and initialize, or we can just declare one and declare and initialize another if we want. How about, so I've got my integers, so anybody, what if I want numbers that have decimals in them? Does anybody have any thoughts for that? Yeah, how about down there? Yeah, and yeah, what's a float?
Just, I guess a decimal. I don't know how you like to set it on a decimal.
Yeah. Anybody have any, thoughts about what's the difference between like a float and an integer? How about back there? Yeah, and that sounds right to me. And the reason that there is this difference is that they're reserving different amounts of space on the computer. So an int takes up less space, and a double and a float can hold more decimals. So yeah, let's say that I create a double. Like so. Okay, so now I have a question, and I would actually like everyone to first identify a neighbor that you can tell what you think the answer is to. So let's just take 1 second or 30 seconds to meet someone sitting next to you, exchange names, and then once everyone's ready, we will chat. Okay, so, all right, listen up. Thank you okay, listen up, please. You did a great job meeting each other. I'm very impressed. So, I would like you to contemplate the question in the comment on line 31. How do I store whatever I plus j is in a variable called results? So I want my variable. This is going to be one line of Java code. I want the variable to be called result, and I want it to be computed by adding I and j together. And yeah, and then so when I uncomment this, I guess I don't need to comment this. When I run this line, I should print it out. So go ahead and talk to the person that you just met about what you think the answer should be, and you can run it, to check yourself too. Find a pair. Are there any groups or individuals who are not sure, like 50% sure or less? Okay, everyone's looking pretty good. Great. So can I get a volunteer to share what you think the answer is? Sure. How about over here?
Int results equals I plus j.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so now let's try it out. Yep, we did it. So yeah, I just thought one tricky thing there, if you're just coming from Python, is remembering to declare, to specify that the result has to be an int, right? If I just run something like result equals I plus j, Java is not going to figure out for me that what do you get when you add two integers? It's just another integer. Java's not going to figure that out for me. I have to remember the data type there. Cool. Any questions? Yeah.
Is a variable always just one value?
Yeah, that's a good question. What are you thinking for something else?
It would make it extremely difficult if it could only be one value.
Yeah. Like, say you wanted like a list of everybody's ages in the class or something. You wouldn't want to have to have Bob's age equals 12, Ashley's age equals 14. Yeah, there are things called arrays that we will learn about, I think maybe next class, but we'll use them in the lab that can help us out there. Yeah. But yeah, that's a very thoughtful insight. Yeah.
Can we overwrite variables that we've already written?
Yes, and thank you for asking that, because I did mean to show it. Yeah, so suppose I set I to be 85. As you would guess from the name variable, I can change it. So maybe I make I -1, and now, so before I added 85 and 33, now I'm going to add -1 and 33, so I'm expecting the result to be 32. And indeed it is. So, yes, the ability to change variables is definitely an important part of our programs. Okay, so we've talked about booleans, ints, doubles, any other sort of basic data types that you've seen in other classes?
Strings.
Yeah. So strings are also very important for us. Actually, before I get to strings, I'll introduce one other data type that is sort of more basic. So we would call it a primitive data type. That's a char. And chars are just single letters. Like, for example, the letter A is a char. And in Java, we think differently about these primitive data types and about more complex data types, which are objects. And so strings are, haha, thank you. I heard someone care, I'll call it letter, sure. So strings are objects. And so, for example, let's say I want a string that's going to hold a name. I might call it name. And just like in other programming languages, I can put this in quotes. But you might notice, does anybody, so we've already had, I see that Eclipse is giving me some hints. Okay. You can see Eclipse is giving me some hints about, you haven't used this variable. It also gives me hints with the colors of the words that I'm using. So does anybody notice anything about the color of the word string? It's blue. Yeah, what else is, did you have?
It's the same color as system.
Yeah, exactly. And it's different from char or from double or int, right? Because string is an object. So we will do a lot with objects, and classes and object-oriented programming, which is going to be one of the big things as we're moving to Java from Python. But just in terms of writing our first programs, one thing that we can do with strings that we can't do with objects that we can't do with our primitive data types is call methods. So if you remember from other programming, objects, they store data, and they also give us ways to manipulate, ways to manipulate that data themselves. So, for example, if we want the length of this string, that's going to be an integer, and I want to say I want to save the length of this string as a variable called length. So it has to be an integer. I can't choose this. I'm gonna get a length, integer length here. But I can actually call a method on this variable name, and that method is just length. And you can see another thing our IDE is doing is, as soon as I start to use this dot operator, I start getting some suggestions. Not just some suggestions. I'm getting a lot of suggestions. And I know in this case that I want to use length. It's a nice confirmation that I'm remembering the name of this method correctly because it's coming up. But this will return me the length, and maybe just to check myself, I will print it out. And let's see this. And great. The length method seems to work because the name Joe is indeed 3 characters long. And just as another example, I guess just remembering how to program, I can call methods inside other methods. For example, let's say I want to print out the character at the first character of name. So I could do that by first using a method on name. I could do something like char, because it's going to be char first, and that's going to be name. And there is a method called char at, and it wants an index. So which character do you want? I want the 0th character. We will recall that Java is 0 based, so we always start our list of things with 0. So I could do this and then print first, right? But can anybody suggest a way to do this just in a single line? Sure.
Just system.out print meaning.char.
Yeah, exactly. So I will just do that, and we can try running that, and we successfully got our J back. Great. Let's look at our some notes here. So, okay, we've seen how we always have to define a type for our variables. We saw that all our programs must define a class, and all of our programs have this main function. We've also seen that we need semicolons and curly braces. Oh, I didn't even talk about that, huh? Let's go back so we can... so our single statements, we always need our semicolons. If we forget those, so for example, I don't have that, I can't even run it because there's an error. So we need semicolons. We also have in Java, our blocks of code are contained within curly braces. So for example, everything inside here is defining this type. So, this class that we call data types. And so we start that with a curly brace here and ends with another curly brace there. Yeah.
I might have missed it, but my string here wasn't working until I used double quotes.
Oh.
You have to use double quotes?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's possible. I know there's some languages that you do have to use double quotes. I think because I tend to use double quotes for strings, that hasn't come up for me. But I can double check that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and that might be the kind of thing that I now do instinctively, but so I think you're right that we'll use, like if I tried to use double quotes for my char, yeah, so thank you. So yeah. Yeah, and so if you're coming from Python, you might remember that white space was how we delineated our code blocks. Like for loops, you make a new line, like a Python for loop looks something like for
X in range.
Yeah, x in range 10, and then now I would say print x, right? So that is meaningful in Python, but when Java sees this, it sees this all as just one line, because white space doesn't mean anything in Java. So instead, we're going to use something like curly braces to indicate that this print of x is, and then we would also have a semicolon. Not saying this is exactly what the Java code will look like, but in terms of how we would use our braces, our curly braces, and our semicolons, that is how we would use those. Alrighty. And I put, from the book, there's, I think, a nice, friendly image that you can take a look at if you want to sort of start to understand all of these little bits that are included even in the most simple Java program. since in Python, we could just say print hello universe, but in Java, in order to just print hello universe, we have a lot more going on. So I put this as a resource for those that don't have the book. You can check out this picture here if you'd like. And we saw when we made our new class, in Eclipse, we can check that box that automatically makes our main method. And our Java classes need to start with capital letter. And we saw our primitive data types. We saw the string class. And one thing that I wanted to show you all is the documentation. So it's here. I just went back to the main syllabus page. There's a link to the official Java documentation. My guess is you can get here from Google as well. And personally, the way that I use this is I just use the search bar. But let's say that we were just working with strings. Let's see. At the bottom of our program here. And so I can use the documentation if I want to know all about strings. I'm just going to click on this very first one here. And we can see, yeah, this is all about the string class. We say that an instance of the string class is a string object. It looks like there's some examples here. And we can also see all the methods that strings have. So we already looked at length, and we looked at, we looked at char at. But we can see a lot of other ones, and we can see what the inputs are. So don't be afraid to use the Java documentation. So back in your pairs, I'll give you 2 minutes to open the documentation for strings. So find your way there, and with your partner, choose one new method that we haven't seen yet, and get a line of code running for that, and I will ask for a volunteer pair to tell us about their method that they chose. Just tell us the code. So you got 2 minutes. And it's not too late to find a partner if you don't have one. Okay, let's bring it back together. How many groups were able to visit the documentation website? Open it up in your group. Great. And can I get a volunteer to share the string method that their group chose? Yeah. Trim? Oh, nice. Yeah. So, yeah. So a lot of times when you're writing practical programs, you need to get rid of white space. And so it looks like we have a nice trim method that can help us with that. So yeah, you're saying you had an example string like has white space, and it's got some spaces, and then it's got some spaces at the end, something like that. And then now, maybe I'll call it toTrim. And now I call, so yeah, what should I do?
I did it all in one line. I just had the system that out, did the trim to the string.
Nice, yeah. So you're saying that you did something like, okay, I'm going to put system.out.println, and okay, so here's a basic. So we can see what happens when I print this. Uh-oh. What did I... Oh, okay. I introduced an error and then forgot to change it. Okay, so yeah, we have this, but say we don't actually want to print all that white space around it. I can just put trim here. Is that what you did?
Yeah,
Do I
defined it and I did system out and just did the variable name trim.
Ah, yeah. I actually don't know that this will work. Apparently it does. Yeah. But yeah, I could have done. Yeah. Yeah. String. Blah. And then now I would do. This is what you did, right? Yeah. So yeah, that works too. Oh, classic. Thank you. Great. So yeah. Oh, yes, I moved away from the lecture. And we're going to go back to the lecture page. Okay, so the last thing I want to do today, we'll probably just start this, but we can just some more practice. Suppose I want to write a program in Java that gets the temperature in Fahrenheit from the user and prints it in Celsius. So in Python, the code is here, but I'll actually put this into Eclipse so it can be a little bigger. Remember, if I want to make I want to write some Java code, we're going to write a program that converts the temperature. So I'm going to make a new class. I'm going to keep it in my day 2 package. I'm going to call it tempconv, and I'm going to check this box so that I get my main method, and then I'm going to create that. So let me use my multi-line comment here, and I'll try to paste in my Python. So let me just put this all the way at the end, or all the way at the side. Okay, so this is what my program, let me copy this, Python program. Okay, so this is my Python program. It is nice and short, but we want to do the same in Java. So, just thinking of in terms of time, maybe we can all actually just sit on this for the weekend. You're welcome to try it yourself. The one thing that I will point you to, in case you do want to work on this yourself, is there's something called Scanner. And this could be something that you look on the documentation at. But yeah, we will do this next week. If you have any questions, feel free to come up to ask me. I think so. I think so. Yeah, like I will say, I think of them as the same. But I won't 100% for sure say it to you. Let me. Yeah. No. Let me write the two. You know, this is why I do this, so I can. Yeah, exactly. And then what was the other one? Okay. Yeah. The other question that I didn't have a great answer to was why declare variables instead of initial, like early. Okay, let me stop my recording.
Yeah.